At first, about 4 days ago, the manager of our agency in Busan, strangely pulled out the blue ticket and got the first report. The first time I received a report saying that the color is crushed. How did you solve it? I used the Iblock hose as it is. It comes back immediately after changing to a thin hose. You said so. I'm weird. It was fine when I did the thick hose, but I've been thinking about it. If you attach a thick hose, we process the cartridge and processing the head when you connect it like this. If you bond the head, the results are all different. If you put a rubber barring there, to the extent that very fine details are displayed, there is a slight difference in pressure. If the hose is thick, that means it's sensitive. I changed it to a thin hose and it was back to normal right away. So I'm in the office. I cut a 50 centimeters thick hose, fill the inside with ink and close it with the shutoff valve. Take it and release the ink. Thick hose, 50 cm thick hose, contains all 4 color inks in a thin hose. I weighed it with a scale with all 4 colors of ink in it. It weighs twice as much. 2x difference, almost 2x difference. If the hose is thick, it is not just a simple hose. Ink gets into it, and the weight makes a huge difference. So I've been thinking about it. Back when we looked at 8500, there were our cartridges. It's supposed to plug underneath and you don't need a hose here. It was the only way to attach an ink bottle. Have a refurbished original cartridge. Then look at the 8000, 8500, and K550 series. Inside it, a very thin hose with an inner diameter of 0.8 millimeters. It becomes a hose through which ink passes like this, and that 8000, 8500 is away without a head chamber. There is something like a bladder in it. It just grabs the ink. Ink in the nozzle unconditionally. It should be a pulling phenomenon. This is the basic principle of how inkjet printers work. It has to be pulled, but 941st, how is the head pulling phenomenon? There is a swim bladder made of a spring like this type of swim bladder in the head. When the nozzle is cleaned and sprayed, the swim bladder is slightly pulled, but it has a spring. The pressure is just applied and the ink is drawn in the shape of the ivor. But there is no separate chamber after this bladder. There is a nozzle right in the vat space. So 564 and 922 seem to be completely different yin yang. The effect on the nozzle is almost the same. And come to think of it, that thin hose is HP. If you look at 8000, 8500 at the time made by large companies, the heads come and go. The connected hose is made of a 0.8 millimeters inner diameter urethane hose. Almost no ink weight, so what the president said seemed credible. Actually, I did all this with a thin hose at that time. I had a seminar in Daegu. Also, I mentioned the thin hose. They told me to use a thin hose, but it's actually from the field. 564 922 silver. It is better to use a thinner hose than a thick one. It's definitely stable. Please set up with Iblock for the first time. Bottom type feeders. Set up from the bottom type feeder. Print quality. Check all output normally. If there is no problem, then unblock another feeder. Bottle feeder again. Initially, the initial production is unconditional. Craft a feeder from a bottom feeder. Then, if the airline gets clogged even a little, you can see the ink flowing backwards at a glance. And if you pull out the full color by color, head work, was it right or not? Inspection is possible. You can do it at the bottom type feeder. That way I don't get pushed back. Colored paper does not fade accurately if the output is good. The airline in the head is correctly clogged. After that, even if you attach a different feeder in the beginning, the initial production must be done with the bottom type feeder. Do it on Iblock. It's the best.